The boss's daughter froze after seeing her childhood photo in the waitress's hand. The afternoon light slanted through the enormous windows of the executive office, casting long shadows across the dark mahogany desk. Emily Harrington had walked these halls 1,000 times before, her heels clicking against marble floors with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned her place in the world. At 25, she was the picture of privilege. Designer clothes, perfect hair, a trust fund that could buy anything her heart desired. "Dad, I just need you to sign these," she said, pushing open the heavy door without knocking. She never knocked. Why would she? Charles Harrington looked up from his computer, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, his suit probably worth more than most people's monthly rent. At 47, he was still handsome in that distinguished way that made women at galas whisper and stare. But right now, there was something different in his eyes, something Emily had never seen before. Fear. "Leave them on the desk," he said, his voice tight. "I'll look at them later." Emily started to set the papers down when she noticed it. A manila folder, slightly open, revealing the corner of an old photograph. She shouldn't have looked, she knew that. But something about the way her father's hand moved to cover it, just a second too late, made her curious. "What's that?" she asked, reaching for it before he could stop her. "Emily, don't..." But she'd already pulled the photograph free. The world seemed to tilt sideways. The image was faded, the colors washed out by time, but the faces were clear enough. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, with light eyes and wavy brown hair, standing next to a woman in a maid's uniform. Behind them, unmistakable even in the photograph's poor quality, was the Harrington mansion. The same mansion where Emily had grown up. The same gardens, the same stone fountain. But it was the child that made Emily's hands start to tremble. Those eyes, that smile, the dimple in her left cheek. It was her, or someone who looked exactly like her. "Papa." Emily's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Who is this little girl?" Charles stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that made Emily flinch. In 3 strides, he was around the desk, snatching the photograph from her hands with a violence that shocked her. "That's none of your business." His voice was rough, almost savage. "Don't you ever go through my things again." Emily stepped back, her heart pounding. Her father had never yelled at her like this. Never. Charles Harrington was many things. Distant, workaholic, sometimes cold, but he'd never been cruel to her. Not once in 25 years. "I didn't mean to. I was just..." "Get out." The words hit her like a slap. Emily felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. Harringtons didn't cry. At least that's what her mother always said. She turned and walked out, her legs feeling strange and unsteady beneath her. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than any slam. In the hallway, Emily pressed her back against the cool wall and tried to catch her breath. What the hell just happened? Her father had reacted like she'd discovered some terrible secret. Like that photograph was dangerous somehow. But why? It was just an old picture. Just a little girl and a maid. A little girl who looked exactly like Emily had looked at that age. She pulled out her phone and stared at the black screen for a moment before opening her photos, scrolling back through years of selfies and party pictures and vacation shots until she found what she was looking for. A photo from her 5th birthday party. There she was, wearing a ridiculous princess dress, chocolate cake smeared on her face, standing in the same garden where that other little girl had stood. Emily zoomed in on her own face, then tried to recall every detail of the mysterious photograph. The resemblance wasn't just striking, it was impossible. Same eyes, that particular shade of hazel with flecks of green, same nose, same dimple. Even the way the girl's hair fell in waves over her shoulders was identical. "Miss Harrington." Emily jumped, nearly dropping her phone. James, her father's assistant, stood a few feet away, looking concerned. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," she said automatically, the lie smooth and practiced. "Just fine." But she wasn't fine. As she walked down the corridor toward the elevator, her mind raced with questions that didn't have answers. Who was that woman in the maid's uniform? Why was there a child who looked exactly like Emily standing in her family's garden 20 years ago? And why had her father reacted like she'd stumbled onto something forbidden? The elevator doors slid open, and Emily stepped inside, watching her reflection in the polished metal. She thought she knew everything about her life, her family, her history. She'd never had reason to question it. Why would she? She was Emily Harrington, daughter, heiress, princess of the Harrington Empire, but that photograph had cracked something open. And now, standing alone in the descending elevator, Emily felt the first whispers of a question she'd never thought to ask. What if everything I know about myself is a lie? The elevator reached the ground floor with a soft chime. Emily stepped out into the marble lobby, her heels clicking against the floor with the same confident rhythm as always. But inside, something had shifted. That photograph had planted a seed of doubt, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she wouldn't be able to let it go. She had to know who that little girl was. She had to know why her father had kept that photograph hidden away like some dangerous secret. She had to know the truth, even if it destroyed everything. Outside, the city stretched before her, towers of glass and steel glinting in the afternoon sun, streets filled with people rushing to their next appointment, their next meeting, their next moment. Emily stood on the steps of the Harrington building and felt, for the first time in her life, utterly lost. Somewhere in this city, maybe even closer than she thought, there was a woman who looked like she could be Emily's twin. There was a story that her father had buried so deep he'd rather scream at his own daughter than let it surface. And Emily Harrington, who'd never had to fight for anything in her entire privileged life, was about to start digging. 3 days had passed since the incident in her father's office, and Emily hadn't been able to think about anything else. She'd barely slept, spending her nights scrolling through old family photos, searching for any clue, any hint of the mystery that photograph represented. But there was nothing, just pictures of her perfect life, birthday parties, vacations in Europe, Christmas mornings surrounded by expensive gifts, no mysterious little girl, no maid in a uniform, no secrets, at least, none that had been documented. "Miss Harrington, the car is ready," her driver announced through the intercom of her penthouse apartment. Emily sighed, grabbing her purse. Tonight was another one of those tedious corporate events her father insisted she attend. Some charity gala at the Harrington building. She'd put on the expected designer dress, smile at the expected people, and pretend everything was perfectly normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. The ballroom was already filled with the city's elite when Emily arrived. Women dripping in diamonds, men in $1,000 suits, waiters circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. She recognized most of the faces. The mayor, several city council members, CEOs and socialites who'd been fixtures at these events since she was a child. Emily, darling, her mother, Victoria, glided over in a stunning emerald gown. Her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. "You look lovely. Come. There are some people from the Wilson Foundation who want to meet you." Emily let herself be led through the crowd, nodding and smiling mechanically. Victoria was in her element here, the perfect corporate wife, commanding the room with practiced grace. At 45, she was still beautiful in that sharp, controlled way that made other women either admire or fear her. "Mrs. Harrington, the new catering staff has arrived," someone whispered to Victoria. "Good. Make sure they know to stay in the service areas. I don't want them mingling with the guests." Emily barely registered the comment. She'd heard similar things her whole life. There was a world for people like the Harringtons, and another world for everyone else. The two weren't supposed to mix. She was reaching for another glass of champagne when she saw her. A young woman in a simple black server's uniform was placing appetizers on one of the tables near the window. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her movements were efficient but nervous, clearly new to this kind of event. Nothing about her should have caught Emily's attention, except everything did. The woman turned, and Emily's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor. The noise drew stares, but Emily barely noticed. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the server who'd frozen in place, staring back at her with an expression of equal shock. It was like looking into a mirror that showed her in another life. The same hazel eyes with those distinctive green flecks, the same facial structure, high cheekbones, slightly pointed chin, the same height. Even the way she held herself, one hip slightly cocked, was eerily familiar. The only real difference was their clothing, Emily in her designer gown and diamonds. The other woman in a polyester uniform and practical shoes. Emily? What on earth? Victoria's voice cut through the moment. Clean this up immediately, she snapped at a nearby waiter, then turned back to Emily. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I have, Emily thought, but she couldn't find her voice. The server, the woman who looked exactly like her, had turned away, continuing to arrange the appetizers with hands that Emily noticed were trembling slightly. She was pretending nothing had happened, but Emily could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing over like she couldn't help herself. I need some air, Emily managed to say, pulling away from her mother's concerned grasp. But darling, we haven't even... Emily didn't hear the rest. She was already moving toward the terrace doors, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be real. People didn't just run into their identical twins at random corporate events, unless they weren't random at all. The photograph. The maid. The little girl who looked exactly like Emily. Oh God. Excuse me. Emily spun around. The server stood a few feet away, wringing her hands nervously. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. It was like looking at a photograph of herself in different clothes. I'm sorry. I don't mean to bother you, the woman said, her voice soft and uncertain. I had to. Did you see it too, the fact that we look exactly alike? Emily finished, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded, relief flooding her face. I thought I was losing my mind. When I turned around and saw you, She trailed off, shaking her head. I'm sorry. This is crazy. I should get back to work. Wait. Emily grabbed her arm without thinking. What's your name? The woman hesitated, clearly weighing whether she should be talking to one of the guests like this. Emily could see the internal debate playing out across features that looked so much like her own. It was unsettling. Claire? She finally said. Claire Miller. Miller. The name from the photograph. Anna Miller. Emily felt the world tilt again, just like it had in her father's office. How long have you worked for the Harrington company? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. This is my first event. Actually, I just got hired last week. Claire's brow furrowed. Why? Is something wrong? Everything is wrong, Emily thought. Everything is so wrong. Claire? A sharp voice called from inside. The catering manager was gesturing impatiently. We need you on the floor. Not chatting with guests. Claire flinched. I have to go, I'm sorry. I really need this job and... It's okay, Emily said quickly. Go, but Claire, don't leave before the event ends. Please, I need to talk to you. Claire looked uncertain, but nodded before hurrying back inside. Emily watched her go, watched the way she moved through the crowd like she was trying to make herself invisible. So different from Emily's own confident stride through these same spaces. Two women, same face, same age, different worlds. Emily pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened her photos again. Finding that picture from her 5th birthday, she zoomed in on her own face, comparing every detail to what she'd just seen. It wasn't just similar, it was identical. And the name, Miller, the same name from that photograph her father had hidden away. Inside, the party continued, music and laughter drifting out through the open doors. Emily could see her mother working the room, her father deep in conversation with potential investors, everyone playing their parts in the elaborate performance of high society. But Emily couldn't go back in there. Not yet. Not until she figured out what the hell was happening, because one thing was suddenly, terrifyingly clear. That photograph in her father's office wasn't just some random image from the past. It was connected to Claire Miller. And whatever secret her father had buried 20 years ago was standing right here, serving appetizers at a corporate event, completely unaware that she was living proof of something Emily's family had desperately tried to hide. Emily leaned against the terrace railing, the cool night air doing nothing to calm the storm raging inside her. She thought about the way her father had reacted, the violence in his voice when he'd snatched that photograph away. He knew something about this, and Emily was going to find out what it was. Even if it meant tearing apart every carefully constructed lie her family had ever told her. Emily waited until nearly midnight. The gala had ended hours ago. The guests had filtered out to their limousines and town cars, and the cleaning crew was finishing up. She'd told her driver to leave without her, claiming she had a headache and wanted to walk. Victoria had looked suspicious, but had left with Charles, both of them too preoccupied with schmoozing potential donors to press the issue. Now, Emily stood outside her father's office, her heart hammering against her ribs. The building was mostly empty, just a few security guards making their rounds. She had a key. Of course she did. Daddy's little princess had access to everything. Except the truth, apparently. The office was dark, illuminated only by the city lights streaming through the windows. Emily closed the door softly behind her and locked it. Her hands were shaking as she moved toward the desk where she'd found that photograph. She started with the obvious places: desk drawers, filing cabinets, the small safe behind the abstract painting on the wall. She knew the combination. Her father had never been good at hiding things from her, or so she'd thought. Nothing. Just contracts, financial documents, boring corporate paperwork. Emily sat back on her heels, frustration building in her chest. It had to be here. That photograph couldn't have just disappeared. Her father was hiding something. And if she'd learned anything about Charles Harrington over the years, it was that he kept records of everything. He was meticulous, almost obsessive about documentation. Her eyes drifted to the bookshelf that lined the far wall. Leather-bound volumes, mostly for show. Business books her father had probably never read. First editions of classics that were more about status than literature. But there, on the bottom shelf, partially obscured by a decorative bookend, was something different. A small wooden box. Emily pulled it out, her pulse quickening. It was locked, but the lock looked old, simple. She grabbed a letter opener from the desk and worked at it for a few minutes until she heard a satisfying click. Inside was a treasure trove of secrets. More photographs, dozens of them. The same little girl at different ages. As a newborn, a toddler. That photo from when she was 5. And in many of them, a young woman Emily didn't recognize. Pretty, with kind eyes and simple clothes. A maid's uniform in some shots. Casual clothing in others. But it was the documents beneath the photos that made Emily's blood run cold. A birth certificate, female child, born 25 years ago at Mercy General Hospital. Mother, Anna Miller. Father, Charles Harrington. Emily's vision blurred. She blinked hard, reading it again and again. Charles Harrington. Her father. Beneath the birth certificate was a stack of papers, hospital records, adoption papers that had been started but never completed, and letters. So many letters, all in her father's handwriting, addressed to Mi Niña, but never sent. Emily's hands trembled as she unfolded one. My little girl, wherever you are, I hope you're safe. I hope you're loved. I failed you in the worst way a father can fail. Your mother, Anna, she was good and pure, and I destroyed her life. Victoria found out about us, about you, and I was too weak to stand up to her. I let her take you away. I let her convince me it was for the best. I've searched for years, but it's like you vanished. Maybe that's what I deserve, to never see your face again, to never hold you. Perdóname, mi niña. No supe protegerte. The paper slipped from Emily's fingers, drifting to the floor. Her father had another daughter. The words echoed in her mind, refusing to make sense. Charles Harrington, her distant, workaholic, emotionally unavailable father, had written these letters full of pain and regret, had loved someone enough to break his vows, had lost a child and spent years searching for her. And Victoria, her mother, the woman who'd raised her, who'd taught her which fork to use at dinner and how to smile at photographers, had orchestrated it all. Emily felt like she was drowning. She grabbed another document. It was a private investigator's report from 15 years ago, detailing a search for a child named Claire Miller, born at Mercy General, taken from her mother at age 5 and placed in the state foster system. The trail had gone cold after she was adopted by a family named Miller in the suburbs. Claire Miller. The server from tonight, the woman with Emily's face. Oh God, oh God. Emily's mind raced, piecing together the impossible truth. Her father had an affair with a maid named Anna Miller. They had a daughter, Claire. When Victoria found out, she'd done something terrible. Separated the mother and child, hidden the baby away. And Charles, weak and cowardly, had let it happen. But that meant Emily pulled out her phone with shaking hands, searching for her own birth certificate. She'd never really looked at it before. Why would she? She knew who she was. Emily Harrington, born at St. Catherine's Hospital, daughter of Charles and Victoria Harrington. Except now, looking at the dates, something clicked into place. She was born 3 months after Claire. 3 months. They couldn't be twins. But the resemblance was too perfect to be coincidence unless... Emily's stomach lurched. She grabbed the photos again, studying them more carefully. There, in one of the newborn photos, she could see it. The baby had a small birthmark on her left shoulder. Emily had the same birthmark. She'd always thought it was just a random quirk of genetics. But what if it wasn't random at all? What if Victoria, desperate to maintain her position as Charles's wife, had orchestrated something even more twisted than Emily had imagined? What if she'd somehow taken the affair's baby and... No, that was insane. That was too cruel. Too calculated, too. Victoria's voice echoed in her memory. A Harrington never shows weakness, Emily. We take what we want and we protect what's ours, no matter the cost. Emily's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the papers. She took photos of everything with her phone. The documents, the letters, the pictures, evidence, proof that her entire life was built on lies and stolen identities. The door handle rattled. Emily froze, her heart stopping. Someone was trying to get in. Security, Miss Harrington? Are you in there? She shoved everything back into the box, her movements frantic. Just a minute, she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. She managed to get the box back onto the shelf, the letter opener back on the desk. Just as the security guard unlocked the door. Miss Harrington, is everything all right? We saw a light on. Everything's fine, Emily said, forcing a smile. I just needed to grab something from my father's office. Got a little work to do this weekend. The guard looked uncertain but nodded. Would you like an escort to your car? No, thank you. I'll just be another minute. After he left, Emily sagged against the desk, her legs barely holding her up. She looked at the photos on her phone, the evidence of 25 years of lies. Claire Miller wasn't just some random woman who happened to look like her. Claire Miller was her sister, her twin, separated at birth by a woman so consumed with jealousy and ambition that she'd torn apart a family. And somewhere out there, Anna Miller, Claire's mother, possibly Emily's biological mother, was living her life, probably still grieving the daughter who'd been ripped from her arms. Emily thought about the woman she'd called Mother, her entire life, Victoria, with her perfect hair and designer clothes and razor-sharp smile. Had she ever loved Emily? Or was Emily just a trophy? Proof that Victoria had won? That she'd claimed the Harrington heir and erased the evidence of her husband's betrayal? The city stretched out before her through the windows, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere down there, Claire Miller was probably in a tiny apartment, exhausted from working the gala, completely unaware that her entire existence had been stolen. Emily pulled out her phone and looked at the photos again. Claire's smile, Claire's eyes, Claire's face that was so heartbreakingly similar to her own. My sister, Emily thought, and the words felt both impossible and absolutely true. She had to tell her, had to tell Claire everything. But first, she needed to know for certain, needed proof beyond old photographs and emotional letters. Emily sent a text to her personal assistant. I need the name of a discreet DNA testing facility. First thing Monday morning. Don't tell anyone. Then she texted a number she'd gotten from the catering company's staff list. Claire, this is Emily Harrington. We need to talk soon. It's about your mother. It's about Anna Miller. Please. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Claire's response came at 2 a.m. How do you know my mother's name? Emily stared at her phone screen, trying to figure out how to answer. Can we meet? Tomorrow, please. I know this sounds crazy, but I found something that involves both of us. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, there's a coffee shop on Maple Street. Joe's. 10 a.m., Emily exhaled. I'll be there. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those photographs. The little girl with her face, the maid named Anna, her father's desperate letters by the time dawn broke over the city. Emily had consumed an entire pot of coffee and memorized every detail of the documents she'd found. Joe's was the kind of place Emily would never normally go. Vinyl booths with cracked seats, laminated menus sticky with syrup, the smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease hanging in the air. She felt overdressed in her casual designer jeans and cashmere sweater, but she'd deliberately chosen the most understated outfit she owned. Claire was already there, sitting in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a mug. She was wearing faded jeans and a simple hoodie, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Without the catering uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable, and still heartbreakingly identical to Emily. "Hi," Emily said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Hi." Claire's voice was guarded, her eyes wary. "Look, I don't know what this is about, but if you're going to report me for talking to you at the gala, I really need this job. I know I shouldn't have approached you, but no, God, no, that's not why I wanted to meet." Emily leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Claire, I need to ask you something, and I know it's going to sound insane, but please just answer honestly. Do you know who your biological parents are?" Claire's expression shuddered. "Why would you want to know that? Please. Just, please." A long silence. Claire stared down at her coffee, her jaw tight. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "I was adopted when I was 8. Before that, I was in foster care. My adoptive parents, the Millers, they're good people. They told me what little they knew, which was that I was taken from my mother when I was 5. She was a domestic worker who couldn't afford to take care of me, or at least that's what the state claimed. They said she was unstable, unfit." Claire's hands tightened around the mug. "But I remember her, not a lot, but pieces. Her voice, the way she smelled like lavender, how she used to sing to me in Spanish." Emily's heart was racing. "Do you remember her name?" "Anna Miller." Claire looked up, her eyes meeting Emily's. "Now you tell me, how do you know about her?" Emily pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. She'd transferred some of the photos from last night, the less damning ones. She showed Claire the image of the little girl and the maid. Claire went completely still, her face drained of color. That's the Harrington mansion," she whispered. "In the background. That's where you live." "Yes. And that's my mother. I'd recognize her anywhere." Claire's voice cracked. "Where did you get this?" "My father's office. Hidden in a locked box." Emily took a breath. "Claire? That little girl in the photo? I thought it was me. I would have sworn it was me. But it's not, is it?" Claire shook her head slowly, her eyes never leaving the photo. "No, that's me. I have this same picture. It's the only one I have of her. The only thing I have from before." The coffee shop buzzed around them. Conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine, someone's phone ringing. But Emily felt like they were in a bubble, separate from the rest of the world. "Claire, I need to tell you something. Something I found last night." Emily pulled up another photo. The birth certificate. "Your birth certificate lists Charles Harrington as your father." The words hung in the air between them. Claire's eyes went wide. "What? No, that's not possible. My father was never in the picture. My mother raised me alone until they took me away. Because his wife, my mother, Victoria, found out about the affair, found out about you." Emily's voice was steady, but inside she was screaming. "She's the one who separated you from Anna. She's the one who made sure you disappeared. Why are you telling me this?" Claire's voice rose slightly, drawing a few glances from nearby tables. She lowered it again, but the emotion was still there, raw and painful. "Why would you help me? If what you're saying is true, then your mother destroyed my life, your family, because you're my sister." The words came out before Emily had fully processed them herself, but as soon as she said them, she knew they were true, knew it in her bones. Claire laughed, but it was a harsh, broken sound. "Your sister Emily, look at us. We're the same age. We can't be. We're 3 months apart. You're older." Emily showed her another document, the investigator's report. "But the resemblance isn't a coincidence. I don't know exactly what happened, but my father had an affair with your mother. You were born, and somehow, 3 months later, I was born. To Victoria. You think Victoria is your mother? I don't know anymore." Emily felt tears burning behind her eyes. All I know is that everything about my life is a lie. And you're the only real thing I've found." Claire was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents on Emily's phone. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "I have a necklace. My mother gave it to me before they took me away. It has the initials FD on it. She told me I'd understand what it meant someday. Can I see it?" Claire pulled the chain from beneath her hoodie. The pendant was tarnished with age, but the letters were clear. FD. Emily thought of her father's letters. "Mi niña, my little girl. Flor del destino," Emily whispered. "Flower of destiny. It's Spanish. My father, our father. He used to call you that in his letters." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "He wrote letters. Dozens of them. He never sent them. But he never stopped looking for you, Claire. He just didn't know where to look." They sat in silence. Two young women who looked like twins but had lived completely different lives. Emily in mansions and private schools and summer houses in the Hamptons. Claire in foster care and hand-me-down clothes and 3 buses to get to work. "I don't understand why you're doing this," Claire finally said. "If this gets out, it'll destroy your family. Your mother will. She's not my mother." The words came out with more venom than Emily intended. "I don't know what she is, but after what she did to you, to Anna, to my father, she doesn't deserve that title." Claire wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing, Emily struggled to find the words. "I want to know the truth. All of it. And I think the only way to do that is for both of us to dig into this together. Emily, I can't afford to get involved in some family drama. I need my job. I know, and I'm not asking you to quit or make some grand gesture. I'm just asking you to have coffee with me, to talk, to help me understand what happened to us." Emily reached across the table, stopping just short of touching Claire's hand. "Please, you're the only person who might actually understand what I'm feeling right now." Claire looked at her, really looked at her, and Emily saw something shift in her expression. Recognition, maybe, or kinship, the understanding that comes from meeting someone who's been shaped by the same forces, even if those forces push them in opposite directions. "Okay," Claire said softly. "Okay, but I need you to understand something. I've spent my whole life being invisible to people like you, people who live in mansions and throw galas and never look twice at the servers. If we're going to do this, you need to see me, really see me, not just as some mystery to solve." "I do see you," Emily said, and she meant it. "You're the first real thing I've seen in a very long time." Over the next 2 weeks, Emily and Claire met regularly. Coffee shops, parks, small restaurants where Emily's designer wardrobe didn't draw as much attention. They talked about everything. Claire's childhood memories, the foster homes, her adoptive family. Emily shared stories about growing up Harrington, the loneliness of privilege, the suffocating expectations. With each meeting, Emily felt something she'd never experienced before, genuine connection. Claire was funny and sharp, with a dry sense of humor that caught Emily off guard. She was also deeply kind in a way that felt earned, not performed. When Claire talked about her adoptive mother teaching her to bake, or her struggles to afford community college, her eyes lit up with a warmth Emily had never seen in Victoria's calculating gaze. But Emily was careful. She never mentioned the coffee dates to her parents, never let on that she'd found anything in her father's office. She played her part perfectly. Dutiful daughter, society princess, completely oblivious, until Victoria started asking questions. It was a Thursday afternoon when Emily came home to find her mother waiting in the living room, a glass of white wine in one hand, her expression unreadable. "Darling, sit down. We need to talk." Emily's stomach clenched, but she kept her face neutral. "About what?" "About where you've been spending your time lately." Victoria took a sip of wine, her eyes never leaving Emily's face. "You've been quite secretive, missing lunches, turning down invitations. Very unlike you. I've just been busy, shopping, seeing friends." "Which friends?" Victoria's voice was sharp. "Because I called Melissa yesterday and she said she hasn't seen you in weeks. Neither has Caroline or any of your usual circle." Emily felt trapped. "I've been making new friends." "Is that a crime?" "That depends on who they are." Victoria set down her glass with deliberate precision. "I've had people keeping an eye on you, Emily, for your own protection, of course, and they've seen you spending quite a bit of time with one of the catering staff from the gala. A girl named Claire Miller." The blood drained from Emily's face, but she forced herself to stay calm. "She's nice. We've talked a few times. What's the big deal?" "The big deal," Victoria said, standing up, "is that this girl is not appropriate company for a Harrington. She's nobody, Emily, a server. What could you possibly have in common with someone like that? Maybe I'm tired of only knowing people who care about money and status." Emily shot back, her anger rising. "Maybe I want friends who are actually real." Victoria's expression hardened. "This is about that photograph, isn't it? You've been digging into things that don't concern you." Emily's heart stopped. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." Victoria's voice was ice. "I know you went into your father's office. I know you found his little box of memories, and now you're playing detective with some girl who looks vaguely like you and thinking you've uncovered some grand conspiracy." "Vaguely." Emily stood up, her fists clenched. "She looks exactly like me." "Exactly. And her mother worked here, for this family, 25 years ago, the same time I was born. Coincidence? Bullshit." Victoria slapped her. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Emily touched her stinging cheek, stunned. Victoria had never hit her before. Never. "You will not speak to me that way," Victoria said, her voice trembling with rage. "And you will stop seeing that girl immediately. This obsession is embarrassing and inappropriate." "Why?" Emily demanded, tears blurring her vision. "What are you so afraid of? What did you do to her?" "I protected this family." Victoria's composure cracked, her voice rising. "Your father had an affair with the help, a common maid who thought she could trap him with a pregnancy. I did what I had to do to preserve our family's dignity, our future. You separated a mother from her child. I removed a threat." Victoria was breathing hard now, her perfect facade crumbling. "That woman and her bastard daughter would have destroyed everything we built. The company, our reputation, your inheritance, all of it would have been tainted by scandal." Emily stared at her mother. This woman she'd loved and feared and tried so hard to please, and felt something inside her break completely. "She was 5 years old," Emily said quietly. "Claire was 5 years old when you ripped her away from the only parent she'd ever known. What kind of monster does that? The kind who protects what's hers." Victoria's voice was cold again, controlled. "And that's what you need to understand. Emily, everything you have, this house, your education, your lifestyle, exists because I made hard choices, because I refused to let your father's weakness destroy us. And what about Claire? What about her life? What about it?" Victoria shrugged. "She was taken care of, placed in the system, eventually adopted. She survived. She suffered. Everyone suffers, darling. The difference is, some of us suffer in mansions, and some suffer in trailer parks. I made sure you were in the mansion." Victoria picked up her wine glass again, her hand steady. "You should be grateful." Emily felt sick. "I need to know something. The truth. Am I your daughter, biologically?" Victoria's pause was almost imperceptible, but Emily caught it. "Of course you are. What a ridiculous question. Then you won't mind if I do a DNA test?" "Absolutely not. I won't have you wasting money on... I'll use my own money." Emily moved toward the door. "And if you try to stop me, I'll go to the press with everything I know." "Emily, wait." Victoria's voice stopped her. When Emily turned, she saw something unexpected in her mother's face. Fear. "Please don't do this. You don't understand what you're playing with. Then help me understand." "I can't." Victoria looked older suddenly, vulnerable. "I've spent 25 years building walls around these secrets. If they come down, everything comes down, including you. Maybe I don't want to live in walls anymore." Emily walked out before Victoria could respond. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and texted Claire. "We need to meet now. My mother knows." The response came immediately. The park on 5th, 30 minutes. Emily was already halfway there. When she arrived, Claire was sitting on a bench near the fountain, her face pale in the afternoon light. She stood up as Emily approached. "What happened to your face?" Claire asked, her eyes widening at the red mark on Emily's cheek. "Victoria happened." Emily sat down heavily. She knows we've been meeting. She knows I found the documents, and she basically admitted everything. That she separated you from your mother. That she orchestrated the whole thing. Oh, God. Claire sank back onto the bench. Emily, I can't lose my job. If she's the one who hired the catering company, She already fired you. Claire's face went white. What? I got a text from the catering manager on my way here. You've been let go, effective immediately. Some bullshit about corporate restructuring. Emily felt rage building in her chest. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. Stop. Claire's voice was firm. This isn't your fault. This is hers, and your father's, for being too much of a coward to stand up to her. They sat in silence, watching families walk by. Children playing, normal people living, normal lives. Everything Emily had thought was normal had turned out to be a carefully constructed lie. I need to tell him, Emily said finally. My father. I need to confront him with everything I know. Are you sure? Emily, once you do that, there's no going back. I know. Emily looked at Claire, her sister, her mirror, her proof that the truth was worth fighting for. But I can't keep pretending. Not anymore. Not when you're losing everything because of my family's secrets. Claire reached over and squeezed her hand. It was the first time they'd really touched, and Emily felt an electric shock of recognition. This was family, not the cold, calculated version Victoria had taught her, but something real and fierce and worth protecting. Then let's do it together, Claire said. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Emily nodded, squeezing back. Together. Emily chose Saturday morning. Her father would be in his study, going over quarterly reports like he did every weekend. Victoria would be at her yoga class, then brunch with the other society wives. It was the perfect window. She picked up Claire at her apartment, a cramped one-bedroom she shared with 2 roommates in a neighborhood Emily had never visited. Claire was wearing jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back, her face pale but determined. Are you ready for this? Emily asked as they pulled up to the Harrington mansion. No, Claire admitted, but I don't think I'll ever be ready, so we might as well do it now. They walked through the front door together. The security guard, Marcus, did a double take at seeing 2 nearly identical young women, but Emily just smiled at him. It's fine, Marcus. She's with me. Claire's eyes went wide as they entered the foyer. The sweeping staircase, the crystal chandelier, the marble floors that gleamed like mirrors. You grew up here, she whispered. Yeah. Emily looked around, seeing it through Claire's eyes. The opulence, the excess. Feels different now, like a museum or a mausoleum. They found Charles in his study, exactly where Emily expected. He looked up from his laptop. His reading glasses perched on his nose and froze. The color drained from his face. Emily, who is... But he couldn't finish the sentence. His eyes were locked on Claire, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked like hope. Dad, this is Claire Miller, Emily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But I think you already know who she is. Charles stood up slowly, like he was moving through water. He took a step toward Claire, then stopped, his hand reaching out before falling back to his side. Anna's daughter, he whispered. My God, you look just like... Exactly like me, Emily finished. Because she's your daughter too, isn't she? Charles's legs seemed to give out. He sat back down heavily, his eyes never leaving Claire's face. Where did you... I found your box, Emily said. The photographs, the letters, the birth certificate that lists you as her father. She pulled out her phone, showing him the images she'd photographed. I know everything, Dad. The affair with Anna, Victoria finding out, Claire being taken away when she was 5. Emily, please. You don't understand. Then help me understand. Emily's voice rose. Help us both understand how you could let Victoria destroy this girl's life. How you could write all those letters about searching for her and then just give up. I didn't give up. Charles's voice cracked. I searched for years. I hired investigators, followed every lead, but the trail went cold after she was placed in foster care. They told me she'd been adopted, that her records were sealed. I tried everything. Spent a fortune, but I couldn't find her. Claire had been silent this whole time, standing rigid near the door like she might bolt at any moment. Now she spoke, her voice barely audible. "You gave me this." She pulled the necklace from beneath her blouse, the tarnished pendant catching the light. "My mother, Anna. She said you gave it to her when I was born. FD, Flor del Destino." Charles's eyes filled with tears. "You kept it, all these years. You kept it. It was all I had." Claire's voice was stronger now, edged with anger. "All I had of either of you. Do you know what it's like? Growing up knowing you were thrown away, that your own parents didn't want you? I wanted you." Charles stood again, his voice desperate. "God, Claire, I wanted you so much. But I was weak. I was a coward. Victoria threatened to destroy everything. The company, my reputation. She said if I didn't let you go, she'd make sure Anna went to prison on false charges. She had connections, money, power. I believed her. So you chose your company over your daughter." Claire's words were like knives. "I chose wrong." Charles's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down his face. "I made a choice I've regretted every single day for 20 years. I thought you'd be better off, that you'd have a normal life away from all this." He gestured around the study. "Away from Victoria's poison. But I was lying to myself. I was just too scared to fight for you." Emily watched her father fall apart and felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at his weakness, pity for his pain, and a grudging respect for his honesty, even if it came 2 decades too late. "There's something else," Emily said quietly. "Something I need to know. Am I Victoria's biological daughter?" Charles went very still. "Emily, the truth, Dad. I deserve the truth." A long silence. Charles looked between his 2 daughters, the one he'd raised and the one he'd lost, and Emily saw the exact moment he decided to stop lying. "No," he said finally. "You're not." Emily felt the floor tilt beneath her, even though she'd suspected this. Hearing it confirmed was different. "Then whose?" "Anna's." Charles's voice was barely a whisper. "You're both Anna's daughters. Twins." The word hung in the air like a bomb. "What?" Claire and Emily spoke simultaneously. "Anna was pregnant with twins. When she told me, I was terrified. Victoria had just found out about the affair. I was trying to manage the situation, trying to figure out how to leave her without losing everything." Charles rubbed his face with both hands. "But Victoria, she found out about the pregnancy, and she came up with a plan." "What kind of plan?" Emily asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "She told Anna that if she gave up one of the babies, you, Emily, Victoria would let her keep the other. She'd raise you as her own, claim you were hers. It would save face, stop the scandal, and Anna would still have a daughter." "That's insane," Claire whispered. "It's Victoria." Charles's voice was bitter. "She turned it into a transaction. Anna was desperate, terrified of losing both of you, so she agreed. But then..." He stopped, his voice breaking. "Then what?" Emily demanded. "Then Victoria went back on her word. After the birth, after Anna had handed you over, Victoria took Claire too. She paid people to take her, to place her in foster care under a different name. She told me the baby had died, told Anna that you'd both died in childbirth complications." The room spun. Emily grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. "She told my mother we were dead." Claire's voice was barely human. "She let her believe her babies died. Anna had a breakdown. She was hospitalized for months. By the time she recovered enough to ask questions, to demand proof, Victoria had destroyed all the records, made it impossible to trace anything." Charles looked at them both, his face ravaged. "I only found out the truth years later, that Claire had survived, that Victoria had hidden her away. I've been looking for you ever since." "And Anna?" Claire asked. "Where is she now?" "I don't know. I lost track of her 15 years ago. Last I heard, she was somewhere in the Midwest, but..." Charles shook his head helplessly. Emily felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Victoria hadn't just separated a mother from her child. She'd stolen both babies, told their mother they were dead, and built an entire empire of lies on top of that foundation. "We need to find her," Emily said, her voice shaking. "We need to find Anna and tell her the truth, that we're alive, both of us." Claire nodded. tears streaming down her face. She looked at Charles. This man who was her father but had failed her so completely. Do you have any idea where she might be? I can make some calls, use my resources. Charles stepped toward Claire tentatively. Please let me help. Let me try to fix this, even if it's 20 years too late. Claire looked at Emily, a silent question in her eyes. Emily nodded. Okay, Claire said. But we do this together, all three of us. No more secrets, no more lies. No more lies, Charles agreed, his voice thick with emotion. I promise. Charles made good on his promise. Within 48 hours, he'd arranged for a discreet DNA testing facility to process samples from all three of them. The nurse who drew their blood asked no questions. Her professionalism bought and paid for by Harrington money. Now they sat in Charles's study, waiting for the results that would confirm what they already knew in their bones. Emily and Claire on the leather couch, Charles at his desk, the tension in the room thick enough to cut. She'll be home soon, Charles said, checking his watch. Victoria's brunch had run long, but she'd texted that she was on her way. When she gets here, we tell her everything, Emily interrupted. No more protecting her, no more letting her control the narrative. She's going to fight this, Charles warned. Victoria doesn't lose gracefully. Let her fight. Claire's voice was hard. I've spent 20 years being invisible. I'm done hiding. The sound of the front door opening made them all tense. Heels clicked across marble, getting closer. Then Victoria appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always, her smile freezing when she saw Claire sitting next to Emily. What is she doing in my house? Our house, Charles corrected. And she has every right to be here. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Charles, what's going on? We're waiting for something, Emily said calmly. The DNA test results should be here any minute. The color drained from Victoria's face. You did what? We tested all three of us, Charles said, standing up, to confirm what we already know, that Claire is my daughter, that both girls are Anna's daughters, that you've been lying for 25 years. Victoria's mask of composure slipped, revealing the panic beneath. This is ridiculous. You can't possibly believe this girl's story. She's clearly after money, trying to... Stop it. Emily's voice cut through Victoria's protests. We know everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the deal you made with Anna, how you broke that deal and took both of us, how you told Anna her babies died. That woman was unstable. She would have ruined. She was a mother who lost everything. Claire stood up, her whole body shaking with rage. You destroyed her life. You destroyed mine. For what? To play house with my sister. To pretend you were something you're not. Victoria's face hardened. I gave you a better life than you ever would have had with that maid. Look at Emily. Educated, cultured, successful. Look at yourself. Working in catering. Living in some hovel. You should be thanking me. The slap came so fast Emily almost didn't see it. But suddenly Victoria was stumbling back, her hand pressed to her reddening cheek. And Claire was standing there with her arm still raised, breathing hard. Don't you ever, Claire said, her voice deadly quiet. Talk about my life like you know anything about it. You stole everything from me, my mother, my sister, my father, my identity. You don't get to justify that by pretending it was for my own good. Charles's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, his face going pale. The results are in. He pulled up the email, his hands shaking slightly. Emily watched his eyes scan the document, saw the moment the truth settled over him like a weight. 99.8% probability that Emily and Claire are full biological siblings, he read aloud. 99.9% probability that I am the biological father of both. He looked up at Victoria, his eyes hard. And 0% probability that Victoria Harrington is the biological mother of Emily Harrington. The silence was deafening. This doesn't prove anything, Victoria said, but her voice was weak. So what if Anna was the surrogate? I'm still the one who raised Emily. I'm still her mother in every way that matters. You're not a mother, Emily said, standing up to face Victoria. Mothers protect their children. They don't steal them. They don't lie to them for their entire lives. She felt tears burning in her eyes but refused to let them fall. I have spent 25 years trying to be good enough for you. Perfect enough. But I was never your daughter. I was just evidence, proof that you'd won. Emily, please, don't. Emily held up her hand. I'm done listening to you. We all are. Victoria looked around the room, at Charles's cold expression, at Claire's fury, at Emily's disgust, and seemed to realize she'd lost. Her shoulders sagged, the perfect posture slipping. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice small. The truth, Charles said. All of it. Where is Anna? What did you do with her after she recovered from the hospital? Victoria laughed bitterly. You think I kept track of the help? I paid her off, gave her enough money to disappear and start over somewhere far away. That was the deal. She'd keep quiet about the babies, and I'd make sure she was comfortable. But she doesn't know they're alive, Claire said. You let her spend 20 years thinking her daughters were dead. It was cleaner that way. Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing a business transaction. No messy custody battles, no scandal. Just a tragic story about a maid who lost her babies and got compensated for her loss. Emily felt sick. You're a monster. I'm a survivor. Victoria straightened her spine, some of the old steel returning. I did what I had to do to protect this family's legacy. To protect you, Emily. Whether you want to admit it or not. If the truth had come out back then, the scandal would have destroyed the company. Everything your grandfather built would have been gone. And that justifies kidnapping, fraud, emotional torture. Charles's voice was shaking with rage. Victoria, you told a mother her children were dead. You separated twin sisters. You built our entire marriage on a foundation of lies. Our marriage was already a lie, Victoria shot back. You think I didn't know you never loved me? That you married me for my father's connections and money? At least I gave you an heir. At least I saved your precious company. The front door chimed, the sound of the security system alerting them to a visitor. They all froze. I'm not expecting anyone, Charles said, moving toward the foyer. Emily and Claire followed, Victoria trailing behind. When Charles opened the door, a woman stood there, thin, worn, with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too much pain. But those eyes were familiar, so familiar. Claire gasped. Mama! Anna Miller stood on the threshold, her hands clutching a worn purse. Her face a map of 20 years of grief. She looked at Claire, then at Emily, her eyes widening with recognition and disbelief. No, she whispered. No, it's not possible, they told me. They said you were both dead, Claire finished, tears streaming down her face. They told you we were dead, but we're not. We're here. We're alive. Anna's knees buckled. Charles caught her before she hit the ground, helping her to a chair in the foyer. She was shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps. How? She managed to ask, looking between the twins. How did you find me? We didn't, Emily said, kneeling in front of her. How did you find us? Anna pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her purse with trembling hands. It was a printout of a social media post, a photo from the charity gala, showing Emily in her designer gown. Someone had tagged Claire in the comments, mentioning how weird it was that a server looked exactly like Emily Harrington. I saw this last week, Anna said, her voice breaking. Saw Claire's face and I knew. I knew she was alive. That she'd survived. So I came here, hoping to find answers, hoping to... She looked at Emily, really looked at her, and started to sob. There were two of you, Dios mío. There were two of you all along. Victoria stood in the doorway, frozen, watching the reunion with an expression Emily couldn't read. You told me they died, Anna said, her voice rising as she looked at Victoria. You looked me in the eye and told me my babies didn't make it, that there were complications, that they were gone. It was necessary, Victoria said flatly. Anna stood up, her grief transforming into rage. Necessary. You stole my children. You let me spend 20 years mourning them. And I gave them a better life than you ever could have. Victoria shot back. The slap echoed through the foyer. Not from Claire this time, but from Anna herself, who moved faster than anyone expected. Victoria stumbled back, her hand flying to her face, shock replacing her usual composure. You don't know anything about what I could have given them, Anna said, her voice shaking. You don't know anything about love. Charles made the decision that night, as Anna sat with her arms around both daughters, 20 years of separation dissolving in tears and whispered words. He pulled out his phone and began making calls. "What are you doing?" Victoria demanded, her voice sharp with panic. "Calling an emergency board meeting," Charles said calmly. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp." "You can't be serious, Charles. If you go public with this, then the truth comes out, exactly as it should have 25 years ago." He looked at Victoria with something close to hatred. "I've been a coward long enough. I let you control this narrative for too long. That ends now." Victoria's face went white. "You'll destroy everything. The company's reputation, our family name, the stock price. I don't care." Charles's voice was steel. "I care about those 3 women on that couch. The ones you victimized, the ones I failed to protect. Nothing else matters anymore." By morning, word had spread through the corporate network. Something big was happening at Harrington Corp. Shareholders arrived early, along with board members, key investors, and, because news like this always leaked, several reporters who'd caught wind that Charles Harrington was making some kind of major announcement. Emily stood in the wings of the main ballroom with Claire and Anna, watching the room fill up. The same crystal chandeliers that had hung over the charity gala now illuminated rows of seats packed with the city's elite. She could see her mother's friends, the society women who'd never looked twice at servers or maids, the business partners who valued profit over people, the families who'd known the Harringtons for generations. They were all about to have their world shattered. "Are you sure about this?" Claire asked, squeezing Emily's hand. They'd barely been apart since Anna had arrived, like they were making up for 25 years of separation in a single night. "I've never been more sure of anything," Emily said, and she meant it. The nervousness she felt wasn't doubt. It was anticipation. The truth was about to set them all free. Victoria sat in the front row, her posture perfect despite the tension radiating from every line of her body. She'd tried everything to stop this. Threats, bribes, emotional manipulation. But Charles had been unmovable. For the first time in their marriage, he'd chosen someone else over her. He'd chosen his daughters. At exactly 9 a.m., Charles stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent, hundreds of eyes turning toward him. Emily could see the cameras already recording, the reporters with their pens poised. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Charles began, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. "I've called this meeting to make an announcement that will shock many of you. It shocked me too, despite being at the center of it for 25 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victoria's fingers gripped the arms of her chair. 25 years ago, I had an affair with a woman named Anna Miller, who worked as domestic staff in my home. That affair resulted in a pregnancy, twin daughters." He paused, letting that sink in. "One of those daughters, you all know. Emily Harrington has been in the public eye her entire life, assumed to be the biological child of myself and my wife. Victoria," the murmurs grew louder. Emily could see confusion on faces, the beginning of understanding. But Emily is not Victoria's biological daughter. She is Anna Miller's daughter, as is her twin sister Claire, who was taken from Anna at 5 years old and placed in foster care under circumstances I'm ashamed to admit I allowed to happen." The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction, camera flashes going off, people standing up to get a better view. Charles raised his hand for silence. "I know you have questions. I know this is difficult to process, but I ask you to listen, because the women at the center of this story deserve to be heard." He gestured toward the wings. Emily took a deep breath, squeezed Claire's hand one more time, and stepped out onto the stage. The gasp that went through the room was audible even over the commotion. Then Claire stepped out beside her. The effect was electric. 2 identical young women, dressed differently. Emily in a designer dress, Claire in simple but dignified clothes Anna had helped her pick out, but unmistakably, impossibly the same person. "This is Claire Harrington Miller," Charles said, his voice thick with emotion. "My daughter, Emily's twin sister, the child who was stolen from her mother 25 years ago and hidden away because my wife could not accept the truth of my infidelity." Victoria stood up abruptly. "This is slander. I won't sit here and be accused." "Sit down," "Victoria," Charles's voice was like a whip crack, "or security will escort you out." For a moment, Victoria looked like she might bolt, but pride won out over panic. She sat down slowly, her face a mask of fury. "I have documentation," Charles continued, pulling up images on the large screen behind him. The photographs from his box appeared, baby pictures, the image of young Claire with Anna, the birth certificates, DNA tests confirming that both Emily and Claire are my biological daughters, and that Anna Miller is their biological mother. And I have testimony from people who worked in our household 25 years ago, who witnessed what happened. One by one, former staff members stood up in the audience. The old groundskeeper, a housekeeper who'd retired years ago, Charles's former assistant. Each of them had pieces of the story, had seen Anna pregnant, had witnessed Victoria's rage, had known something terrible happened but had been too afraid or too loyal to speak up. Until now, Victoria Harrington orchestrated the separation of these twins, Charles said, his voice breaking slightly. She convinced Anna to give up one child by promising she could keep the other. Then she broke that promise, taking both babies and telling Anna they had died in childbirth. She raised Emily as her own while Claire was placed in foster care, eventually adopted by a family who had no idea about her true origins. Anna stepped forward then, her courage bolstered by her daughters on either side when she spoke. Her voice carried across the room with unexpected strength. For 20 years, I mourned my daughters. I visited their empty graves that Victoria had created with fake death certificates. I blamed myself for their deaths, tortured myself with what I could have done differently. Her voice shook but didn't break. And all that time, they were alive, growing up apart, never knowing each other, because one woman's jealousy and cruelty mattered more than the truth. The reporters were writing frantically. Camera phones were everywhere, capturing every moment. Emily could see the shock on faces throughout the crowd. Some disgusted, some fascinated, some clearly calculating what this meant for the company's future. "I'm making this public," Charles said, "because these women deserve recognition. Claire deserves to be acknowledged as a Harrington. Anna deserves to have the truth told. And Emily deserves to know where she really came from." He looked directly at Victoria. "And because the person responsible for this cruelty needs to face consequences. You'll regret this," Victoria said, her voice low and dangerous. "When the stock plummets, when the lawsuits start, when this family's reputation is destroyed, you'll regret choosing them over everything we built." "No," Charles said simply. "The only thing I regret is not doing this 25 years ago." He pulled out a folder and handed it to his lawyer, who stood nearby. "I'm filing for divorce. I'm also removing Victoria from all positions within the company, effective immediately. The board will vote on this, but I believe the evidence speaks for itself." The vote was swift. Shareholders who'd been loyal to Victoria for years looked at the twins standing side by side, looked at Anna's tear-stained face, looked at the documentation Charles had provided, and made their choice. Unanimous, Victoria Harrington was out. Security appeared at her sides as she stood, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. "You're all fools," she spat. "This will destroy you. The scandal alone will tank the stock. You're throwing away everything for what? Sentiment? Guilt? For family," Emily said, speaking publicly for the first time. Her voice rang clear across the ballroom. "The real kind, not the fake version you tried to create." Victoria looked at her, at the daughter she'd raised but never truly loved. And for just a moment, Emily saw something that might have been regret flash across her face, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by cold fury. "You were never mine anyway," Victoria said viciously, and let security escort her out. The room exploded with noise again. Questions, exclamations, the sounds of a world being rewritten in real time, but Emily barely heard it. She was looking at Claire, at Anna, at her father, who'd finally found the courage to do the right thing, and then she was pulling them all into an embrace, the four of them standing together on that stage while cameras flashed and the old world crumbled around them. A new one was being born. The weeks following the announcement were chaos. The media couldn't get enough of the story. Twin heiresses separated at birth, a scheming socialite brought down, a corporate empire shaken to its foundations. Emily's phone rang constantly with interview requests, book deals, movie offers. She ignored them all. She had more important things to focus on. Anna had moved into one of the guest houses on the Harrington estate. Charles had insisted, and for once his money was being used for something that actually mattered. Emily would never forget the look on Anna's face when she first saw the small cottage. Simple compared to the mansion, but luxurious beyond anything she'd ever had. "It's too much," Anna had protested weakly. "It's not enough," Charles had replied. "It will never be enough to make up for what I took from you. But please, let me try." Now, on a Saturday morning 3 weeks after the revelation, Emily sat in Anna's kitchen watching her biological mother make breakfast. It was surreal. This woman who was a stranger, and yet so familiar, who had Emily's eyes and Claire's smile, who moved through the kitchen with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd spent a lifetime working. "You don't have to cook for us," Emily said gently. "We could have the house staff." "I like cooking," Anna interrupted, flipping pancakes with a smile. "It's one of the few things that makes me feel normal, like myself." Claire wandered in, still in pajamas, her hair a mess. She'd been staying in the mansion with Emily, the two of them making up for lost time by staying up late talking, sharing stories, learning each other's quirks and habits. "Is that coffee I smell?" Claire asked hopefully. "Strong and black, just how you like it," Anna said, pouring a cup. Then she poured another for Emily, with cream and 2 sugars. Exactly right. She knew both her daughters now, was learning their preferences and personalities, filling in 25 years of blanks. They ate together at the small kitchen table, and Emily marveled at how different this felt from the formal dining room breakfast she'd grown up with. Victoria had insisted on perfect posture, proper utensils, polite conversation about nothing that mattered. Here, they talked and laughed and interrupted each other, Anna's hand reaching out occasionally to touch one of her daughter's arms, as if confirming they were real. "I need to tell you both something," Anna said after they'd finished eating. "I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've made a decision." Emily and Claire exchanged glances. "Charles has been very generous," Anna continued. "More than generous. He's offered me money, a permanent place to stay, anything I want. But I think," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "I think I need to find my own way, build something that's mine, not given to me out of guilt." "What do you mean?" Claire asked. "I'm going to open a bakery," Anna said, a smile spreading across her face. "I've always loved baking. It was the one thing that kept me going during the dark years. Making bread, decorating cakes, creating something beautiful out of simple ingredients. Charles has offered to invest as a business partner, not charity, and I think I'm ready to try." Emily felt a surge of admiration for this woman who'd lost everything, but refused to let that define her. "That sounds amazing. You should call it Anna's," Claire suggested. "Simple, classic, or Flor del Destino," Emily added softly. "Flower of Destiny." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "I love that. It feels right, like something beautiful coming from all this pain." They spent the rest of the morning planning, locations, menus, designs. Emily volunteered to help with the business side, using skills she'd learned shadowing her father at the company. Claire offered to help with the actual baking, revealing that her adoptive mother had taught her the basics. It felt good to build something together, to create instead of destroy. That afternoon, Emily and Claire went to visit Charles at the Harrington Corp offices. The building felt different now, lighter somehow, without Victoria's poisonous presence. The employees who'd witnessed the public revelation treated them differently too. Some with curiosity, some with sympathy, but all with a new kind of respect. Charles was in his office, but he wasn't alone. A lawyer sat across from him, paperwork spread across the desk. "Perfect timing," Charles said when they entered. "This is Margaret Chen, my attorney. We were just finalizing something important." "What kind of something?" Claire asked warily. She still hadn't fully warmed to Charles. Forgiveness was a process, not a switch. "Your official recognition as my daughter and heir," Charles said. "Birth certificate amendments, legal name change if you want it, and..." He slid a document across the desk. "Equal share in the Harrington estate and company." Claire's eyes went wide. "I don't want your money," I know, but you deserve it anyway. Charles's voice was firm. Everything I have should have been split between you and Emily from the beginning. I'm correcting that now. Claire, Emily said gently, it's not about the money. It's about recognition, about claiming your place in this family. Claire looked down at the papers, her jaw tight. What if I don't want a place in this family? What if I don't want the Harrington name or the company or any of it? Then you don't have to take it, Charles said simply. But the option should be yours. That's all I'm trying to give you. Choices. The choices Victoria stole from you. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up the pen, her hand shaking slightly, and signed her name. Not Claire Harrington. Not yet, but Claire Miller, acknowledging her patrimony, claiming her inheritance. Thank you, Charles said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Claire replied. I'm still deciding if I forgive you. That's fair. The sun was setting when Emily and Claire walked through the mansion gardens together. The same gardens where that photograph had been taken 25 years ago, where a mother had held her daughter before being torn apart. Do you ever think about what life would have been like? Claire asked. If we'd grown up together. All the time, Emily admitted. I picture us as kids, sharing a room, staying up late talking, fighting over clothes, having each other's backs. She smiled sadly. But then I think about who we became because we were apart. You're strong in ways I'll never be. You survived things I can't imagine. And I learned to see through the lies, to question everything. Because something always felt wrong. We're like two halves of the same person, Claire said. Separated and then grown in different directions. I wonder if we'll ever really feel whole. I think we're finding our way there. Emily linked her arm through Claire's. It's going to take time. There's no instruction manual for rebuilding a family that was destroyed before it even had a chance to exist. They walked in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. In the distance, they could see Anna's cottage, smoke rising from the chimney. Tomorrow she'd start looking at properties for the bakery. Next week, Emily would begin her official transition into a leadership role at Harrington Corp, working alongside her father to reshape the company's culture. And Claire had enrolled in business classes at the community college, determined to learn the skills she'd need to help Anna succeed. They were building something new, not the family Victoria had tried to fabricate, but something real and messy and true. Emily, Claire said suddenly, thank you for digging into this, for not letting it go when you found that photograph. You could have just ignored it, kept your comfortable life. No, Emily said firmly, I couldn't have. Not after I saw you. Not after I realized what had been stolen from us. She turned to face her sister. You know what Victoria told me once? She said that Harringtons take what they want and protect what's theirs, no matter the cost. I used to think that meant being ruthless, but I was wrong. What does it mean? It means fighting for the people you love, really fighting, even when it costs you everything. Emily smiled. And you, Claire, you're worth fighting for. You always were. I just wish someone had realized it sooner. Claire pulled her into a hug, and they stood there in the fading light. Two sisters, finally together, finally home. Above them, the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere in the city, Victoria was alone in an apartment that probably cost more than most people's houses, but felt empty compared to what she'd lost. And maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to understand that the empire she'd built on lies had never been worth the price. But that was her story to live with. This story, the one being written in real time in the Harrington Gardens, was about healing, about second chances and found families and the stubborn resilience of love. It was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the revelation that shook the Harrington Empire to its foundations. The media frenzy had finally begun to die down, replaced by other scandals, other stories. But for the people at the center of it all, life had fundamentally changed. Emily stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, the same bedroom she'd slept in her entire life, though it felt different now. Everything felt different. She adjusted the collar of her blouse, preparing for another day at Harrington Corp, where she and her father were slowly but surely transforming the company culture. No more secrets, no more using people as pawns. It was harder work than she'd expected, but it was also the first time she'd felt truly proud of the Harrington name. Her phone buzzed, A text from Claire. "Grand opening today. You better not be late." Emily smiled. How could she forget? Today was the day Anna's bakery officially opened its doors to the public. Flor del Destino had been months in the making, finding the perfect location, renovating the space, perfecting recipes, hiring staff. Anna had insisted on doing most of it herself, accepting help but not letting anyone else carry the load. She needs this, Charles had explained to Emily one night. She needs to prove to herself that she can build something beautiful, that she's more than what Victoria made her believe she was. Emily grabbed her coat and headed downstairs. Charles was already waiting by the car, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him during her childhood. Jeans, a sweater. He looked younger somehow. The weight of lies finally lifted from his shoulders. "Ready?" he asked. "Absolutely." The bakery was in a charming neighborhood Emily had never visited before Victoria's fall from grace. The kind of place where people actually knew their neighbors, where kids played on sidewalks and corner stores had been family-owned for generations. Nothing like the sterile, wealthy enclaves she'd grown up in. Flor del Destino occupied a corner building with big windows that let in streams of golden morning light. Through the glass, Emily could see Anna directing last-minute preparations, Claire arranging pastries in the display case, both of them moving with the synchronized efficiency of people who'd found their rhythm together. A small crowd had already gathered outside, neighbors curious about the new business, food bloggers who'd heard about the opening, and a few reporters who still couldn't resist the fallen socialites' victims' triumph angle. Emily ignored them and pushed through the door. The smell hit her first. Fresh bread, cinnamon, vanilla, chocolate. Heaven in olfactory form. The interior was warm and inviting, with exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and photographs hung throughout. Emily recognized some of them. The original picture of young Claire and Anna, now framed and displayed proudly. Photos of Emily and Claire as children, side by side even though they'd never met. And new pictures. The three of them together, laughing, building this new life. "You made it." Claire rushed over, flour dusting her apron. She looked happier than Emily had ever seen her, her eyes bright with excitement and nerves. "Of course we made it," Emily said, pulling her sister into a hug. "We wouldn't miss this for anything." Anna emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She'd changed too over these months, still carried the marks of hard years, but there was a lightness about her now. Hope, Emily realized. For the first time in 25 years, Anna Miller had hope. "Thank you for coming," Anna said, embracing Charles carefully. Their relationship was complicated. Too much history, too much pain for it to ever be romantic again. But there was respect now, and gratitude, and a shared love for the daughters they'd created together. "We should do the ribbon cutting," Claire said, checking her watch. "People are waiting." They gathered outside, the four of them standing together in front of the bakery. A local councilwoman had agreed to say a few words, and a handful of reporters had their cameras ready. But Emily barely heard the speeches. She was too focused on Anna's face, the way her mother's hands trembled slightly as she held the scissors, the tears shining in her eyes. "This bakery represents more than just a business," Anna said when it was her turn to speak, her voice carrying across the small crowd. "It represents hope, second chances, the idea that even when everything is taken from you, you can rebuild. You can create something beautiful from the ashes of grief." She looked at her daughters, her voice breaking slightly. 25 years ago, I lost everything I loved. I spent decades believing my babies were dead, that I had failed them in the worst way a mother can fail. But they were alive. They were fighting. They were finding their way back to me. A tear rolled down her cheek. And now we're here, together, building something new, not trying to recapture what was stolen, but creating something better, something true. Claire squeezed her mother's hand. Emily did the same on the other side. Charles stood slightly apart, but his eyes were wet too. "So please," Anna continued, "come into Flor del Destino, eat our bread, taste our pastries, but know that what you're really tasting is love, the kind that survives separation, the kind that heals wounds, the kind that makes miracles possible." She cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. The bakery was packed within an hour. People lined up for Anna's famous conchas, her cinnamon rolls, her chocolate croissants that Claire had helped perfect. Emily worked the register, messing up orders and laughing at her mistakes, while Claire shuttled trays from the kitchen and Charles, impossibly, bussed tables like he'd been doing it his whole life. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. During a brief lull in the afternoon, Emily found herself on the small patio out back with Claire, both of them exhausted but exhilarated. "Can you believe this is our life now?" Claire asked, leaning back in her chair. 6 months ago, I was serving appetizers at events, invisible to everyone, and now I'm co-running a bakery with our biological mother. My twin sister is my best friend, and our father is actually trying to be a decent human being. It's surreal, Emily agreed. Sometimes I wake up and think I dreamed all of it, that I'm going to walk downstairs and Victoria will be there with her critiques and her cold smiles, and none of this will be real. But it is real. Yeah, it is. Emily turned to look at Claire. Can I tell you something? Something I've been thinking about a lot. Always. I used to think being a Harrington meant having everything. Money, status, power. But I was lonely every single day of my life. I had acquaintances, not friends. A mother who saw me as a trophy, not a daughter. A father who was more comfortable with spreadsheets than conversations. Emily's voice was soft but certain. And then I found you and Anna, and everything I thought mattered just didn't anymore. Claire reached over and took her hand. I spent my whole life envying people like you, people with money and fancy clothes and perfect lives. I was so angry about what I'd lost, what I'd been denied. But you know what? We both lost something. You lost the truth. I lost privilege. But we found each other. And that's worth more than any inheritance. Emily finished. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun filter through the trees. Inside the bakery, they could hear Anna laughing at something a customer said, the bell above the door chiming as more people entered. Emily, Claire said, do you forgive her, Victoria? Emily thought about that, about the woman who'd raised her but never truly loved her, the woman who'd orchestrated such cruelty out of fear and jealousy, the woman who was now living alone, divorced, stripped of her position, facing lawsuits and public disgrace. I don't know if I forgive her, Emily said honestly, but I don't hate her anymore either. I just pity her. She had everything and threw it away because she couldn't accept the truth. She could have been part of this. She gestured around them, at the bakery, at the life they'd built. But she chose lies instead. That must be lonely, Claire said quietly, living in lies. Yeah, it must be. Charles appeared in the doorway. Your mother wants us for a family photo, he said, and the word family came out easily now, naturally. For the bakery's Instagram. They went inside, the three of them, and posed with Anna behind the counter. The photographer counted down. 3, 2, 1. And they all smiled. Not the practiced, perfect smiles Emily had learned as a child, but real ones, messy and genuine, and full of joy. Later, after the bakery had closed and they'd cleaned up together, Emily and Claire walked through the neighborhood toward their car. The streetlights were coming on, casting warm pools of light on the sidewalk. You know what I realized, Claire said. We don't look exactly alike anymore. Emily glanced at her sister, noticing for the first time that she was right. Claire's hair was styled differently now. Her posture had changed, more confident, less apologetic, and Emily herself had softened, the hard edges of her society princess persona worn away by months of real emotion, real connection. We're becoming ourselves, Emily said, not just reflections of each other, but actual individuals. I like it, Claire said. I like who we're becoming. They reached the car, but neither of them got in right away. Instead, they stood there, looking back at the bakery where Anna was still inside, turning off lights, locking up her dream, made real. Thank you, Claire said suddenly, for that day in your father's office, for not being able to let it go, for digging until you found the truth, even when it would have been easier to ignore it. Thank you for trusting me, Emily replied, for taking a chance on this crazy person who looked like you and started asking invasive questions. They hugged, the embrace lasting longer than necessary but not long enough. When they finally pulled apart, Emily saw tears on Claire's face. Happy ones this time. Ready to go home? She asked. Yeah, Claire said, smiling. Let's go home. And as they drove through the city streets, Emily thought about how far they'd all come, how families could be broken and rebuilt, how truth could hurt and heal simultaneously, how love, real love, was worth fighting for. No matter the cost, the photograph that had started it all was still on her phone, saved in a folder she'd labeled before. But she didn't need to look at it anymore. She had the real thing now, her sister beside her, her mother's love, her father's redemption, and a future that wasn't built on lies. The past would always be there, a shadow they'd learned to live with, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just a story they'd survived,